a generous soul.
She was a very giving person and a very sharing person.
Who helped neighbors in need.
When they needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Janora was always there.
Is found brutally murdered.
This homicide was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked.
There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
It was something that shocked the community.
Police uncover a sinister trail of deception and hate.
He had some strange tendencies. He seemed to be stalking her.
The polygraph came back with some clear signs that he was being deceptive.
To unveil a killer no one expected.
He made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor, so she never saw it coming.
He had two completely different faces on him. He was just the devil incarnate.
One hot summer morning in the sleepy rural town of Clinton, Louisiana, the sheriff's office gets a call that sends them to a farmhouse just outside of town. It belongs to a woman named Janora Guillory.
When Janora didn't show up for work on Monday morning, her coworkers started to get nervous. They called her cell phone, she didn't answer. They called her landline, and it was busy, it stayed busy. At that point, a friend at work called the sheriff's office in East Feliciana and said, "Would you please go check on our coworker, Janora Guillory?"
The deputy that worked for the East Feliciana Sheriff's Office, and he went to the residence to look for her. The door was unlocked. And he discovered the body.
He backed out of the house, and he said he threw up outside. He could barely even speak to the dispatcher. He was so upset by what he found.
Detectives are called to the scene.
You could tell something had happened at the very entrance of the door. There was blood right there on the door handle.
The blood on the floor leads detectives inside the house.
There, you could follow the blood trail, and it went into the kitchen. There were several knives that had blood on them inside of the drawer. There was also evidence like someone tried to use the phone, and there was blood on the side of the phone.
The blood leads to the bedroom, where detectives are met with a gruesome sight. In the middle of the floor lies the lifeless body of 42-year-old Janora Guillory.
You could see evident tears in her skin, which, I mean, we knew at the time were deep stab wounds. She was beaten severely. There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
The lamp was broken and stuff knocked over in the bedroom.
I've seen other homicides that I've worked that this one was more brutal.
The body was also half closed, legs open, and she was pinned against the wall. There was a possibility that she had been raped.
Detectives in this small parish don't investigate many homicides, let alone one this brutal. They call in the Louisiana State Police to help process the scene.
They took some DNA samples of the material that was found under her fingernails.
The samples are sent to the lab to see if there are any traces of the killer's DNA.
We didn't find any type of murder weapons. We found that it was actually no forced entry. We pretty well figured that it was somebody that she knew and had a little bit of trust in to open the door.
As police collect evidence, Janora's neighbors, Philip and Amy Skipper, arrive on the scene.
They was, of course, shocked. Philip's wife, Amy, she was really destroyed, and she was a friend of Miss Guillory's.
Police informed Janora's family. Her brother-in-law, Albert, is the first to get the terrible news.
I received a call from the sheriff's office indicating that Janora was dead, had been murdered, and obviously it was just an unbelievably bad moment. To Janora's sister, my spouse at that time, Yvonne, that was probably the single most devastating moment in her life.
The family rushes to the scene. When they arrive, detectives ask them for any details they can provide about Janora.
Janora grew up in Eunice, Louisiana, a small town in St. Landry Parish. From the time that Janora was a young girl in school, she was a very giving person. She was a very intelligent woman, filled with love for life, filled with love for animals.
Janora worked at an insurance company in Baton Rouge, but chose to live in rural Clinton, where she could indulge in her passion for animals.
She had 30 dogs, she had 3 or 4 horses, she had rescue animals, she took care of friends' animals if they couldn't. Animals were a big part of her life.
Friends were a big part of Janora's life too. She was thrilled when a sweet couple moved in across the street, and they immediately hit it off.
Philip and Amy Skipper moved into her neighborhood, and I felt very comfortable that she had developed this warm relationship with the Skippers.
Over the years, Janora and her neighbors became close friends.
Janora told me how reliable they were and how hardworking they were.
Janora really liked her neighbors, and she thought of the Skippers almost like family.
Now her friends are heartbroken over Janora's violent death, and police are faced with the puzzle of finding her killer.
It made no sense. Janora had no enemies, and she wasn't involved in anything shady or suspicious.
When the autopsy report comes back the next day, it concludes that the murder took place between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. It also reveals just how brutal Janora's final moments were. She was shot 5 times with a .22 caliber gun and stabbed 5 times. But neither of these attacks caused her death.
A severe blow to the back of the head severed her brainstem from her body. She was actually alive, and she was fighting back and was stabbed and shot.
This was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked. It was a very much overkill, which usually means it is a crime of passion.
This was a particularly brutal, dastardly deed. We all stood outside Janora's house that morning and talked about who could possibly have done this.
Despite the concern of Janora's family and friends, detectives can't rule out anyone as a suspect.
We began talking to the neighbors and co-workers, the ones that showed up, and just started trying to get information.
One person in particular draws investigators' attention: Janora's neighbor, Philip Skipper.
Philip was real calm. What really got me was his over wanting to help too much, you know. We just had a feeling Philip knew something.
Coming up, investigators uncover a dark obsession.
He was infatuated with her and couldn't take no for an answer.
And menacing secrets.
They called her names behind her back all the time, but never to her face.
There was an incentive for them to actually murder her.
That leads them to a suspect they never expected.
They went on a tour of the murder scene, and he described the whole thing.
He just blurted out, "You have a woman named Mrs. G that..."
After 42-year-old Genora Guillory is found savagely killed in her home, detectives in Clinton, Louisiana suspect that her neighbor, Philip Skipper, might know something about the murder.
Philip was over helpful at the crime scene, and it is something that we wanted to check out more.
Police decide to bring in Philip Skipper and his wife, Amy, for an interview.
Genora really liked her neighbors, and the Skippers had a young child, and their stepson, who was 15 years old at the time.
Philip Skipper tells investigators that when his young family first moved to Clinton, they were down on their luck, but their neighbor Genora kindly helped out.
She started to take them under her umbrella and make sure that they had food and made sure that they had electricity.
When the Skippers needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Genora was always there. The trailer they were living in, for example, was really dilapidated, so Genora helped them buy a new trailer. She helped them improve their lives as much as she could.
Genora's kindness didn't stop there.
She started to employ Philip to do all of the work in her yard and around the house, and employed Amy Skipper to do the work inside her house.
Genora treated the Skippers like family and trusted them with keys to her property.
She was just a very, very generous neighbor.
Detectives want to know if the Skippers ever argued with Genora. Amy Skipper said their relationship had recently been strained by an unfortunate incident.
Philip Skipper was raising pit bulls, and there was one dog that was not a pit that didn't get along with his other pit bulls, and Genora agreed to keep that in her kennel with her dogs. Well, that dog somehow got loose during the day while Genora was at work. The dog ran back to the Skipper's trailer and killed a goat they kept as a pet. Amy Skipper ran over to Genora's house, got on the phone, called Genora at work, and was upset with Genora. Now that's witnessed by a couple of Genora's co-workers who heard Genora's end of the conversation. She was crying by the end of this phone call. That's how upset Genora was. And Genora told Amy Skipper on the phone, "Leave the key at my house, get out of my house, and never come back."
When police question Philip about the conflict, he tells them that he and Amy had since patched things up with Genora, and they were back on friendly terms.
Philip Skipper was dismissive about the falling out. He said it was just a dispute among neighbors, and they worked it out, and there was no lingering after effects.
Police are skeptical about Philip's version of events, and when they notice scratches on his arms, they wonder if they were made by Genora while trying to fight for her life.
Questioned him about that. He said it was from him and his stepson wrestling in the yard.
Not convinced by his story, investigators ask Philip where he was on the night of the murder.
And he said he was asleep at the time that the murder happened.
To confirm Philip's story, police ask to interview his 15-year-old stepson, John Ballio.
When you interview the juveniles in Louisiana, you had to have permission of the guardian or the parent, which we had. I mean, they did cooperate there and let us talk to them.
When detectives question John, they notice scratches on his arms too. Is it possible Genora fought back against two attackers?
John Ballio had marks on him. He gave us the same story.
John corroborates his stepdad's story. But police are still suspicious.
The marks on their arms was really something that we wanted to check out more if they was being truthful. So after that interview, we did decide to have a polygraph set up.
Philip and John agree to take the test, but before it can be scheduled, investigators uncover a critical detail.
During the course of the investigation, we did learn about an insurance policy Miss Guillory had taken out on herself, and the money would go to the skippers.
Was an insurance payout reason enough for the skippers to kill their friend and neighbor?
With a lack of motive, it's really hard to find the killer.
The insurance policy was an incentive for them to actually murder her.
Police have just discovered that murder victim Genora Guillory's neighbors, the Skipper family, are the beneficiaries of Genora's $25,000 life insurance policy.
And it's just kind of unusual that the neighbor would have an insurance policy and list the other neighbor as a beneficiary. They're not related.
The insurance policy raises eyebrows for investigators, but Genora's family is well aware of the policy and does not suspect foul play.
Genora wanted to make sure that the skippers had the food that they needed, had the clothing that they needed for at least a period of time should she meet an untimely departure. The skippers, after Genora's death, did not know how to collect. They contacted me and asked me to assist them, and I did.
Still, police believe the insurance money is a possible motive. That, coupled with the scratches on Philip and John's arms, convinces detectives to take the next step.
Philip Skipper and John Ballio showed up at the Baton Rouge Police Department, which has a polygraphy unit, and they both took separate polygraph tests.
The polygraph interrogator asked 15-year-old John Ballio for an alibi.
John Ballio said he was at home asleep when the murders occurred.
Both John and Philip are asked about their knowledge of the murder by the examiner. And when their responses are analyzed, detectives are surprised by the results.
Both of their tests came back with no real signs of deception.
The results on the polygraphs, they was inconclusive, and the officer that was doing the polygraph didn't think that they had done the murder.
The results are a blow to the investigation, and lead detectives drop the Skippers as suspects.
We still didn't have no physical evidence. And the polygraph made us think, well, we need to start looking elsewhere.
Detectives interview Genora's friends and coworkers about anyone she may have dated recently.
A friend of Miss Guillory's did give us the name of Tommy Alexandra.
Police track down Tommy at his home in a nearby town. He agrees to talk to police. Tommy tells investigators that he met Genora months prior at a feed store where she was stocking up on food for her animals. Genora agreed to meet Tommy for a drink, their first of several dates.
Tommy and Genora had dated on and off for some time.
But it soon became apparent to Genora that Tommy had other love interests.
It turned out Tommy Alexander was not just dating Genora at the time. He was dating a couple of different women.
Janora really liked him, but Tommy didn't want to settle down. He wasn't going to commit to one woman.
Is it possible that an argument between Janora and Tommy could have turned deadly?
We interviewed Tommy about the homicide.
On the night Janora was murdered, Tommy says that he was at home. Police talk to his girlfriend, who confirms his alibi.
They were able to eventually eliminate him as a suspect. As far as physical evidence to tie a specific suspect to the scene, there really wasn't anything. They kept trying to dig for facts, but they were hampered by the fact that, once again, they couldn't figure out why anyone wanted to kill her.
Determined to get justice for Janora, investigators interview her coworkers and discover that she had an ongoing conflict with a man in her life.
We learned about another friend, Steve Williams, from co-workers, and basically what we learned is that he wanted to date Miss Guillory.
But the feeling is not mutual.
Steve Williams managed to persuade Janora to go out one time, and that was enough for her. She didn't want to go out with him again, and she let him know. But he didn't take that no very well.
Miss Guillory had really got concerned about him, according to her friends. He would sit out in the parking lot and wait for her to get off from work, would show up unannounced.
Steve Williams showed up out of the blue while she was working her horses.
He pursued her a little more aggressively than was comfortable for the family.
From co-workers' explanations over there, he seemed to be stalking Janora.
Janora said, "He's bothering me and he needs to stop."
When detectives look into Steve Williams, they're shocked to learn that their potential suspect is one of their own.
Steve Williams was a Baton Rouge police officer.
Detectives have learned that Steve Williams, who had been repeatedly contacting Janora Guillory in the months before her murder, is a fellow police officer.
Steve Williams had recently gotten a job with the Baton Rouge Police Department, and he was a probationary police officer in the next jurisdiction over.
He was infatuated with her, and he was just a guy who couldn't take no for an answer.
Janora's friends knew that she was not interested, and of course after the murder, when the police are asking, well, who may have been upset with Janora, he became a focus of investigation.
When you investigate law enforcement officers, it's harder than most because they know the law as good as you do. But we did have good cooperation through Baton Rouge City Police Department. Whatever we needed, they was willing to provide.
As investigators gather more information about Steve, they uncover an intriguing tip from one of his colleagues, 29-year-old officer Tabitha McCants.
Tabitha came forward during the investigation, and she had worked with Steve Williams at Baton Rouge Police Office.
It turns out she got kind of a bad vibe from him.
Tabitha tells investigators that she overheard Steve having heated phone conversations with a woman on several occasions while at the police shooting range.
She said they'd make multiple phone calls.
Police need to check Janora's phone records to find out if Janora was the person Steve had been calling. Tabitha also tells investigators that Steve mentioned shooting targets at his mother's home. And when they ask Tabitha if Steve mentioned the type of gun he used, her answer sets off alarm bells.
She says he used a .22, which by this time we found out that .22 was used in the shooting of Miss Guillory.
As a police officer, of course, Steve Williams had firearms, the .22 caliber pistol, which is certainly not a police gun, but he did have a .22, and he shot it at his mother's house
Based on the history of him stalking Miss Guillory and the access to 22, that's when we decided that we would check Steve Williams out a little bit more.
When detectives check Janora's phone records, they quickly discover an alarming pattern.
Looking at the phone records, Steve Williams, in my opinion, was stalking Miss Guillory.
The phone records showed 35 calls to Janora's home from the shooting range in 4 months, and an escalating pattern of calls and messages.
Steve Williams had left several messages for Janora the weekend that she was killed. In fact, he told her in a message that he would stop by her house on the day she was killed.
Investigators don't waste a second bringing Steve in for questioning, and when they do, his demeanor has them instantly suspicious.
Steve was real nervous. It was just something about him, like he was hiding something from us.
Steve insists he had nothing to do with Janora's murder and claims he stayed at his mother's house the night Janora was killed.
Steve's mama's residence about 40 minutes away from where the homicide was.
Police believe Janora was murdered between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Could Steve have slipped out undetected while his mother was sleeping?
Janora was shot with a .22 caliber pistol, and the fact that he had a .22, was nearby on the day she was killed, it really put him very high up on the suspect list.
That's when we had him take a polygraph.
Steve's answers are analyzed and the results sent to detectives.
Steve Williams' polygraph examination came back with some clear signs that he was possibly being deceptive.
His polygraph basically told us that he may have known something about the murder. Made me really think that he had something to do with this. That's when Steve advised he wasn't going to talk to us no more. He wanted a lawyer.
Despite Steve's refusal to cooperate, detectives continue to investigate him.
He looked like a good suspect. Now the question would be, can they find the evidence to prove it? They got a warrant for his house, they got warrants for his personal cars, and they got a warrant for his police car. Now, to do that, they had to work with the Baton Rouge Police Department. And the detectives were hoping to recover a .22, knife, anything with blood stains, anything to link him to the crime scene. They didn't find anything.
It's a major setback. But detectives still have one last piece of forensic evidence that they believe could connect Steve Williams to the murder. They get a search warrant for a DNA sample from Steve to see if it's a match for genetic material found on Janora's body.
We had those fingernail scrapings that were taken off her from the State Police Crime Lab.
It was determined, yes, there was some male DNA under her fingernails.
Coming up, investigators zero in on a vicious killer.
I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene, and I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, did she deserve it?
Police hope to use DNA evidence to link Baton Rouge police officer Steve Williams to Janora Guillory's murder. Steve's DNA is compared to material found under Janora's fingernails.
His DNA was not actually determined to be under her fingernails.
The DNA also doesn't match any known criminals in the FBI database.
The fingernail scrapings came back to a known male genetic profile.
With no physical evidence linking Steve Williams to the crime, he's ruled out as a suspect, leaving investigators at a standstill.
The case had gone cold, and they had no other leads to check into it.
The case stays cold for an entire year.
There was great disappointment and great frustration on the part of the family when the case went cold.
The shock of Janora's murder may have faded, but the community lives in fear of a killer who's still at large.
When a murder occurs, it's very alarming. Everybody's on edge, especially after the case was at a standstill.
Then, on July 27, 2001, a tip comes in that changes everything.
And I got a call on the telephone straight to the office. It was Detective Mark Apperson from Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office. And he just blurted out, he's like, "Do you have a woman named Mrs. G that was murdered over there?" And I just kind of looked over at Don and I said, "Yeah, we do have a woman named Miss G that was killed."
The detective there was working a domestic violence battery, and the victim had came in and told him that her boyfriend knew something about a murder in Clinton.
The woman tells detectives her boyfriend's name is Donnie Fisher.
We rode over there and found Donnie Fisher. We brought him over there to the Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office.
But Donnie Fisher is not in the mood to talk.
You could tell he knew something. That's when I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene, and I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, "Did she deserve it?"
Reluctantly, Donnie looks down at the gruesome photos, and moments later, his whole demeanor changes.
He started to break down and cry. And he looked at it and then he told us basically his confession.
Donnie says he heard a detailed account of the murder from one of Janora's neighbors.
The neighbor took Donnie Fisher on a tour of the murder scene.
He said once they got there, he took them and said, "This is how it happened."
Investigators are stunned. They question all of Janora's neighbors at the outset of the investigation, but it didn't uncover any useful information or lead to an arrest. Detectives demand that Donnie reveal the neighbor's name.
He said it was John Ballio, Philip Skipper's stepson.
Detectives are shocked. They press Donnie for details, and he claims that John told him about the murder while cleaning up Janora Guillory's house.
Janora Guillory's family had hired John Ballio to go clean up the crime scene. Donnie Fisher, he was out there helping, so as they're cleaning up the house, John Ballio was bragging to Donnie Fisher about how he killed Janora Guillory. John Ballio took Donnie and said, "Here's what we did here, here's what we did here," and he described the whole thing.
Investigators don't know whether to believe Donnie's story, especially since John Ballio's polygraph was considered truthful. Yet every word of it lines up with the evidence.
John actually showed Donnie how Miss G ran through the house, and talking to Donnie, he described everything that we'd put together from what we seen at the crime scene.
Detectives want to know, why would Ballio want Janora dead after all she had done for his family?
Miss Guillory would rather help somebody than hurt somebody, you know. She would do anything she could to help the Skippers.
It's kind of heartbreaking.
Police now believe that Donnie is telling the truth, so they quickly file an arrest warrant.
We picked up John Ballio late on a Friday evening, and we brought him back to East Louisiana Sheriff's Office for charges of first-degree murder.
Investigators now believe the key to cracking this case is a confession from the alleged killer. Luckily, a recent change in Louisiana state law allows them to question a minor accused of murder without a lawyer or guardian present.
The police had to get John Ballio to come clean and tell the truth.
We brought him to my office and advised him of his rights.
He bounced from here to there during his statements at first when we initially questioned him. And then we started talking about the brutality of this homicide.
After probably an hour, hour and a half interviewing, he finally came and told the story about how he killed Miss G.
But first, Ballio needs to get something off his chest.
He didn't do it by himself.
Pointing the finger right back at Philip Skipper.
Detectives are speechless. John Ballio just implicated his stepdad, Philip, in the murder of Janora Guillory. And that's not all.
He pointed to several other people, too.
Detectives in Clinton, Louisiana have just arrested Philip Skipper's stepson, John Ballio, for the murder of 42-year-old Janora Guillory.
John started basically telling us how this went down.
And John claims he didn't act alone. He points the finger at his stepdad, Philip Skipper, and two other people.
Johnny Hoyt was a brother-in-law to Philip Skipper, and Lisa Skipper Hoyt was a sister to Philip Skipper. He said they killed this woman together.
Lisa and Johnny, that's the first time their name had ever came up. And we were, of course, shocked.
John Ballio gave a detailed confession on videotape to exactly what happened.
John claims that Philip, Johnny, and Lisa had formed a white supremacist gang called the Brotherhood, and that killing Janora was meant to be John's initiation into the group.
It would be my true test of brotherhood.
It was a skinhead gang. Actually, they were very anti-black and neo-Nazi.
Philip Skipper, he had two completely different faces on him. I mean, he had the one he presented to Janora Guillory, which was, the nice neighbor. And then behind her back, he called her all kind of names. He hated black people.
He basically made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor. She never saw it coming.
Killing Janora would not only initiate Ballio into their gang, but also bring a financial windfall.
Philip Skipper was smart enough to figure out that, hey, if she doesn't like us anymore, it's not going to be very long before she changes that insurance policy and names someone else as beneficiary.
Ballio tells detectives that on the night of the murder, the group had been drinking heavily. They arrived at Janora's door at 2 a.m.
When we got there, Lisa walked up to the door and knocked on it and told Miss G that she needed some money to get the baby some diapers.
And Miss G cracked the door open. That's when Johnny hit her and forced his way in there.
They just jumped on her like a pack of hyenas.
She ran through the house, down the hall, screaming for him to leave her alone. And she ran into the kitchen and got to the knife drawer trying to get her knife so she could cut him to make him leave her alone.
Eventually, she ran to her bedroom.
John told us that they took turns stabbing her, and they took turns beating her, and they took turns shooting her.
And then somebody threw the final blow that, according to the medical examiner, killed her instantly. It was a blow with a bat to the head.
Philip started hitting her with the bat. And after Miss G stopped breathing, they started raping her.
John Ballio said that they used condoms. There was not an indication of any seminal fluid or any semen at the scene that night.
With no evidence to back up John Ballio's claim of sexual assault, the rape charges are dropped. But detectives are still determined to bring Janora's killers to justice.
John Ballio's confession gave us enough probable cause to make sure this case got prosecuted.
For cooperating with police, John is given a deal. He pleads guilty to second-degree murder and receives a juvenile life sentence to expire when he turns 21. Lisa Hoyt also takes a plea agreement and is sentenced to 25 years. That leaves Johnny Hoyt and Philip Skipper to face justice in separate trials. When news of the arrests gets out, Janora's family is devastated.
When the family found that Philip and John were involved, they were really, really upset and angry that the people that Janora had taken care of so diligently were the ones involved in her murder.
The prosecutors are determined to bring Janora's killers to justice, but they have a problem. There's no concrete evidence linking either Philip or Johnny to the crime scene.
There was some male DNA under her fingernails, but it did not match the samples that we had from the 3 males in this case.
Both cases rest entirely on the testimony of John Ballio.
John Ballio walked us through what happened that night, and that was crucial for our case. He actually brought everything together and made the whole situation make sense to a jury. It was Philip Skipper's trial. The jury came back with a unanimous verdict. He was guilty of second-degree murder.
Philip Skipper is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Philip's wife, Amy, is not charged with any crime.
A lot of times people ask, what about Amy? What about Amy? Amy Skipper had no idea what her husband was doing.
I genuinely believe that Amy Skipper did not have any knowledge of what was going to take place. I believe that she had nothing to do with this.
Johnny Hoyt was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. But for the family of Janora Guillory, no punishment could possibly make up for the pain they suffered in the wake of her murder.
Janora's father died of a broken heart. It was just a very, very difficult time for everyone in that family. I'd like for people to remember Janora as we knew her, warm and happy, and someone who would give the shirt off her back to anyone who needed it. We are all happy to have had our lives enriched by her passage through this life.
A hard-working New Mexico family.
My dad was up at 4 in the morning, wouldn't go down till 10 o'clock at night.
She was always the type of person to just help everybody.
Is murdered on Father's Day.
My parents are dead.
They were covered in so much blood.
That was the worst I've ever seen.
Police uncover a loving family.
He was a shaken baby. We were told he may never walk again.
With a startling criminal connection.
She has a history of burglaries.
And a jaw-dropping revelation.
I absolutely was shocked. I didn't think I have ever known anybody in my life who could do something that brutal.
To this day, I still can't understand how the person could do something this tragic, this gruesome.
They said, I know who did it, I know who did it.
El Rancho, a tiny New Mexico town home to just a few hundred families, a place filled with honest, hardworking people.
It's a very tight-knit community. It's kind of one of those places where everybody knows everybody.
On Father's Day 2011, police receive a 911 call that shatters the early evening calm.
Santa Fe 911, where's your emergency? Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
I don't know. I just went there and put the answer to the phone. Did you come out and I walked over to check on him and I think it was in the yard?
I can't hear you when you're yelling. Try not to yell into the phone. I can't understand you.
My parents are dead.
The caller is a 35-year-old woman named Cherie Ortiz Rios. Officers arrive at the property she shares with her parents, Lloyd and Dixie Ortiz. Police enter the home occupied by Cherie's parents and her brother to investigate, starting with the master bedroom.
Dad observed a female laying face down in her nightgown attire, deceased.
The brutality that was involved was unspeakable.
She had some trauma on the right side of her temple region.
Police believe this is Cherie's 53-year-old mother, Dixie Ortiz.
As you walk out through the main door to the bedroom, there's a couple of steps up into a kitchen. That's where a deceased male was laying face down. That was probably the worst I've ever seen. There was several defects in his head and shoulder area.
Cherie tells police that this is the body of her 21-year-old brother, Stephen.
As you walk back out the room to the rear of the residence, there was another deceased male laying face down. And he had several injuries to his upper torso and his head region.
The dead man is Cherie's 58-year-old father, Lloyd. Detectives called in the medical examiner to take charge of the bodies. For now, they can only speculate about the cause and time of death.
There were limitations on how well we could examine the injuries because they were covered in so much blood.
It looked like something that had penetrated all of their bodies. So at that point, led us to believe that they were actually shot with some type of a firearm.
While the medical examiner carefully removes the bodies, a forensics team meticulously looks for evidence.
We did not find any shell casings. There wasn't a gun located. There was nothing that indicated that we had our murder weapon at the scene. We have no physical evidence as far as some type of a fingerprint. There weren't any footwear impressions in any of the blood. Maybe we can get some DNA, but we don't know that initially. That has to be sent to the lab for testing. With this type of crime scene, generally there's only a couple different types of motive. It's love, money, or anger. So we have to look into those. Lloyd's wallet was on the counter right next to where Stephen was lying in the kitchen. It had money in it. It didn't look like somebody was in there to steal from them.
There's no evidence to suggest this is a robbery, so police consider whether other motives could have been at play.
Who would stand to gain something from killing 3 people on Father's Day in their house?
Police need to learn more about the victims and their family. They turn to Cherie, who lives just steps away.
On the 2/3 of the property, Lloyd, Dixie, and their son, Stephen, lived, and the other third was occupied by Lloyd and Dixie's daughter, Cherie, her husband, Jesse, and their 2 children, Catalina and Robert.
When her sister arrives, a despondent Cherie can barely keep it together.
I remember my sister running up to me and telling me, that my mom and my dad and my brother were dead.
There were nothing I could do or say to make it better for her. 'Cause I love my sister so much, so much.
Cherie and Angela choke back tears as they tell police all about the most important people in their lives.
My mom and dad were the best parents that I could ever ask for. They were always there, always accepted us for who we were, always stood by our side, no matter what.
Lloyd was a tile contractor who was popular in the town.
My dad was amazing. Up at 4 in the morning, wouldn't go down till probably 10 o'clock at night every day.
Lloyd had been married to Dixie for 34 years. She worked in a nursing home.
She didn't even think of that as being a job. It was just who she was.
Dixie's selfless, caring manner didn't stop with her work. In 1989, when their daughters were just teens, she and Lloyd took in a baby in need.
Stephen was 7 months old when he came into our home as a foster child. He was a shaken baby. His left side of the body was paralyzed. He had cerebral palsy. We were told that he may never walk, talk.
I would grab him out of the crib and stick him right next to me in bed, and he would sleep right next to me. I just loved him so much.
As he grew, the family's love helped transform Stephen into a strong and happy little boy.
Walking, potty training, the developmental milestones, they took a lot longer for him to reach. but he reached every single one of them.
Stephen was part of our church, and he was such an absolute joy. He would greet everybody. Everybody in church loved him. He made it a point to talk to everybody. He was quite a young man.
Stephen, Lloyd, and Dixie's lives have been cut tragically short. But why would someone murder such a loving family? Police find one possible reason: growing outside.
There were several marijuana plants that were being grown. There was a fenced-off area where there was 17 plants growing.
These plants were not visible unless you were directly over them. It was a very tight oxygen area that was padlocked.
A marijuana crop under lock and key outside the family home piqued detectives' interest. Had they just uncovered an illegal drug operation?
My parents had a medical marijuana card for my brother and a grower's license. So they were legally growing medical marijuana for my brother.
My brother had 2 brain surgeries to relieve some of the pressure in his brain, and so they prescribed medical marijuana to him to help relieve the headaches he was having. They were pretty debilitating at times.
The family had known that Lloyd was growing the marijuana for Stephen, and the family would smoke some of the marijuana.
While the marijuana was being grown legally, detectives suspect that it could have attracted the attention of the wrong people.
Was this some type of a drug-related incident?
Police become even more concerned when Cherie and her husband Jesse relay a story about a few suspicious characters they heard outside their home on the night of the murder.
They indicated that they were watching a movie that ended between 1:30 and 2 o'clock in the morning. Their dog started barking, and Jesse got up and walked to the front window. He saw a car that was parked outside.
He heard a kid yelling out there. He heard somebody say, "Hurry up, come on." And he was like, "There's somebody out there." And so he went back in and even grabbed a gun. And he got in his truck and he drove his truck toward that car.
Coming up, the autopsy reveals an unexpected cause of death.
It's not generally your weapon of choice. It's extremely violent, it's brutal.
And the town is stunned when the killer is revealed.
People were in disbelief. As a pastor, it was hard for me to even fathom.
Hours after Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz are found dead, police are hunting for the driver of a car seen outside the home the night before the murders.
We interviewed Lloyd and Dixie's daughter, Cherie, and she said that her husband, Jesse, saw a car that was parked outside and to the left of the property. He had indicated that the vehicle was a gray car.
The dog started barking crazy. My husband, Jesse, he came out and even got in his truck.
Cherie tells police Jesse followed the vehicle in his truck. But when detectives interview Jesse, he tells them a completely different story.
In Jesse's interview, he had failed to mention that he actually left the house that evening.
You never left the house?
No.
Why would your wife say you left the house?
That I left the house?
Why would she say that?
Maybe because I was outside or something.
She said she heard you leave the house. Why would she say that?
I don't know.
It was pretty concerning that he would forget one of the biggest details of that evening with his involvement.
As detectives continue to press Jesse, he suddenly remembers details from the night before.
Jesse.
You know what? I might have left the house. When I seen the car parked. You know what? That is correct. That is correct.
You see the issue?
Yeah, I do. I forgot about that.
It's something you don't just forget about, Jesse.
Well, I'm serious, man.
Man to man. You know where I'm going. Right. It's time to start talking.
I do remember, because I remember going back down there to get my keys. And I did get in my truck. And I drove towards the dead end that way.
What happened then?
I passed by.
Why would you not confront somebody right there?
Because I didn't expect anything.
Jesse, lying to me, dude.
I'm not lying to you, bro. I'm telling you the truth.
Jesse's changing story now has police eyeing him as a suspect. And when they ask him about his relationship with his in-laws, they think they may have hit upon a motive.
We found out something very alarming. There was some stuff in the close past that had caused some family tension between Lloyd and Jesse. And we knew at one point Lloyd was embarrassed of the way that Cherie and Jesse's property looked, so he actually built a fence in between the two properties so he didn't have to look at it anymore. So we knew there was some tension there.
Police can't rule out that tension in the family could have boiled over. Could Jesse have slipped out of the house and committed 3 heinous murders over a minor family squabble? To get to the truth, police grilled the couple about where they were the night of the murder.
They told us the timeline of where they were. They went to a casino. They were there for X amount of time, drove to their residence. They put in a movie right away. They were able to identify almost minute for minute of what they did that entire day, which is kind of unusual.
And when police ask Cherie about finding the bodies, she tearfully gives them a detailed account of the horror that unfolded.
And I walked in and I was like, Mom. And then I walked over to her to shake her, and her head was blown. And so I ran to the kitchen to check for my brother and my dad, and I thought it was my dad laying on the floor in his underwear because his face was so blown off. And so I ran home screaming for my husband. And my husband went back and he said, honey, that's Stephen in the kitchen. Your dad's dead in the backyard.
Cherie's story is plausible, but one thing she can't explain is something she told police when she called 911.
They're dead! They have gunshot wounds to the head! They're dead! They've been dead since this morning!
Cherie said that she knew if she would have went over there, she could have saved him that morning, which told me that she had intimate knowledge of when the homicides actually occurred, which pretty concerning. How would she know that? We didn't know that timeline of when they were actually killed.
Detectives are no longer suspicious of just Jesse. Is it possible that the Ortiz's own daughter could be involved as well?
We did obtain DNA samples from Cherie and Jesse to try and analyze to see if there was anything that could be matched.
Police searched Cherie and Jesse's home, hoping to find a physical link to the murder. With so much activity in the tiny town of El Rancho, news of the crime spreads.
My wife and I raced down to the property. When we had got there, there was quite a few people there. Cherie was just outside herself. She was just hysterical.
Detectives can't help but wonder if Cherie's tears are genuine, yet they're unable to find any physical evidence to link Cherie or Jesse to the murders. When the autopsy report comes back the next day, they hope the results will help them shed some light on the mystery.
I actually did attend the autopsy, and during the course of the autopsy, the pathologist informed us that the wounds sustained were the result of impact trauma. They were killed with a pickaxe. Stephen Ortiz, the son of Lloyd and Dixie, received 17 blows to the head from the pickaxe. Evidently, the victims were beaten long after they were already deceased.
The amount of force that was used to cause this was extreme. My initial reaction was, who had this much anger to want to kill him in such a gruesome manner?
After receiving the autopsy report on a horrific triple homicide in El Rancho, New Mexico, detectives have just discovered that the Ortiz family was killed with a pickaxe. Now that police know what to look for, they quickly set out to find the murder weapon.
One of the agents remembers seeing a Maddox-style pickaxe lying in an adjacent field to the west of the residence. So we immediately went to the scene and found our pickaxe covered in blood. Processed it to the crime scene lab in Santa Fe and waited for results.
There was a lot of hope that there was going to be potential evidence that would link the assailant to the pickaxe.
There was nothing. There was nothing there. We got DNA that was identified on the pickaxe from the 3 victims. Nobody else.
Still, the murder weapon does tell police something about the killer.
It would take a great deal of force to cause that type of injury.
Police had to consider whether either of their suspects were strong enough to commit the crime. Jesse was capable. Was Cherie? While police search for answers, the small town of El Rancho is gripped with fear.
The whole community was on high alert. This kind of crime is very unusual for that area.
All we knew was that there were 3 dead people, people that the community loved, and nobody knew why and how.
Police continue to look into the alibis of the main suspects, Cherie Ortiz and her husband Jesse Rios, who said they'd been to a casino that night. Investigators see if their story can be verified.
They were seen on surveillance video at a gas station, and then they went to a casino.
This supports the couple's claims. Investigators also track what they did the rest of the evening.
We were able to pinpoint the length of time that it would take to drive from the casino to their house.
The timeline puts them in their home, right next door to the murders, at the time of the crime. But it's not nearly enough evidence to pursue a case. Police hope to utilize the publicity surrounding the murders and make an appeal for tips.
Everybody wanted to say who they thought it was, but didn't have any merit behind any of the stuff they were coming forward with.
Detectives also combed through their witness interviews and hit on a name they hadn't considered before.
Initially, Angela had mentioned that Nicholas Ortiz was a 16-year-old, just a regular kid in the community. Cherie had a son that was Nicholas's age, and they went to school together.
Nick Ortiz had a positive relationship with the family. There's no relation, by the way, between Nick Ortiz and the 3 Ortizes who were victim. It's just same last name.
Nicholas's family lived right up the road from us, and that's how him and my son had become friends.
He was having some troubles at home. Eventually, my sister opened up her home to him, gave him his own room.
He would go over next door to Lloyd and Dixie's house. They would give him money. They took him to the flea market. They took him everywhere. So they basically just treated him like he was one of the family.
But the transition to family member wasn't all smooth.
My husband and I had caught Nicholas going through our drawers. We had just started noticing a little bit of money missing. Things moved. So we started giving him an allowance every week for the chores he was doing as well.
Nick's troubles extended to school, too.
Nick had come home from school, and you could tell he had been punched in the face and was kind of beat up. I freaked out. Oh my God, who did this to you? He said, I joined a gang with some friends of mine, and I had to let them beat me up. And I was like, okay, so now today we're gonna have the anti-gang talk. And I mean, we did.
The family tells police that joining a gang was just one example of the problems Nick brought to their home.
One night, my father had asked my son to cut down a plum tree that was dead in his backyard. And when they went out there, Nick was hiding behind some raised flower beds they had in their backyard. And the backyard was a secured area for the 2 little dogs they had, so both gates were locked from the inside. So he had to have jumped the fence to get back there.
Nick basically jumped up and kind of went towards him, in a joking manner, like to scare him. And Lloyd wasn't impressed by it. He didn't think it was funny.
After stealing from the family and joining a gang, this was the final straw for Lloyd.
He basically told Nick that he was not welcome at that property ever again.
It made us feel on guard and very uncomfortable, and we think it's best that it's time for him to move back home. I then text Nicholas and told him that he could come and pick up all the clothing and furniture that we had purchased for him over that time period and he could take it home with him. I never really saw him again after that.
Could the Ortiz's rejection of Nicholas lead him to kill? Had he murdered Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen in cold-blooded revenge? The police bring in Nick for questioning.
Do you know anything about this case that could help us?
Police in El Rancho, New Mexico have a new suspect in the murders of Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz. An unrelated 16-year-old named Nicholas Ortiz.
Do you know anything about this case that could help us?
I don't. The only thing that I've heard was what people have told me from the news.
He came off as this calm kid that didn't do anything wrong. He was just kind of like your baseline kid.
Detectives confront Nicholas about his speedy exit from the Ortiz home.
Lloyd just told you. What exactly did he say? You remember?
Yeah. Telling me that I have to have my trust with them, not to go near them anymore or anything. I said, okay, fine. So you guys want to leave? And that was really the last time we spoke.
Okay. How did you feel then?
The detectives ask where he was the night of the murder.
He said he was at home with his dad and sisters leading up to Father's Day. Between 12 and 1 o'clock, he woke his father up and wished him a happy Father's Day and went back to bed. And he was there when his mom got off of work, which was around 7:30 in the morning. Everything was corroborated as far as his alibi.
Not only does Nicholas have a solid alibi, his demeanor in the interview doesn't suggest he is the killer.
Do you think if you found out who did that?
If I found out who did it, I would call the police right away.
Police find people in the community who vouch for Nick.
Nicholas was part of our congregation. He was very, very gentlemanlike. He was kind. He was willing to help. He would stay late sometimes and help us pick up after the church.
Police cross Nicholas Ortiz off the suspect list. Then, 2 days after the murder, they get an urgent call from Cherie Ortiz.
I called the police and I told them we found out about a safe that was well hidden, enough where my sister and I didn't even know it existed. At my parents' house, my Uncle Walter had called me and said, I built your dad a secret piece of furniture that would hide a safe in it.
The unit was so well concealed, the police had not found it when they searched the house days earlier.
I said, I do not want to know any more until we contact the police. So we had to have it opened up there at the police station.
Inside was $80,000 in cash, as well as some of the life insurance paperwork.
That's when we found that my dad had been saving money for years. He had his retirement saved in there.
Cherie says she didn't know about the money, but police make a discovery that puts her claim in doubt.
We had learned through district court that the power of attorney had been given to Cherie at this point, and she was basically going to be the heir of hundreds of thousands of dollars in life insurance policies that Lloyd and Dixie had. And that $80,000 that was in the safe was part of a cash out from those life insurance policies.
Cherie says she didn't know about the insurance policy. The inheritance was large enough to give Cherie and Jesse a powerful motive for murder. But motive alone wasn't enough to arrest either one of them.
We have no physical evidence that could tie Cherie and Jesse to the crime.
The discovery of the safe also causes police to speculate on how the Ortizes had amassed so much money. Could it have anything to do with the marijuana growing on the property?
Kind of raised some concern to us as to why he was growing it. Are they possibly selling this stuff?
Detectives investigate whether Lloyd was secretly involved in trafficking. The answer comes back clear.
Nothing was taken from this house. It didn't even appear that whoever was there at the time knew that there was pot plants being grown behind this fence. And knowing anything about the industry of marijuana, there were smaller plants, they weren't mature. We were able to pretty much rule out that the gangs were tied in to this.
It's another blow for the investigation. And as days turn to weeks, detectives are no closer to catching those responsible.
Essentially, you do run out of leads or you run into dead ends. As frustrating as it was for us as investigators, it had to have been exponentially worse for the family.
I was on the phone with the police every single day asking, what have they heard? Anything new? What can I do to help? And we were always told, nothing. There's nothing you can do.
I truly felt like they were not ever going to solve this case.
Then, 16 months after the murders, detectives get the break they've been praying for when they receive a call from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department.
In October of 2012, I had just gotten home from work and I got a call that there's somebody there that wants to give some information to me in reference to the homicide. And she was in jail. She said she just wants to get something off her chest.
Detectives are hopeful a new tip will finally help solve the murders of Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz. The information comes from a young woman in the custody of Santa Fe police.
Ashley Ball was 24, and she has a history of burglaries and of drug use.
Ashley told officers that she knew something about the El Rancho murders. At that point, ears started to perk within law enforcement.
Before questioning Ashley, police look into her background.
Ashley grew up in El Rancho.
Ashley wasn't necessarily a troubled teen per se, but she got in trouble a lot.
From a young age was in and out of the detention center.
Lead detective Craig Bobnock questions Ashley about what she knows.
As I started explaining that it was a voluntary interview, she kept interrupting me saying, I know who did it, I know who did it.
Ashley claims that on the night of the murder, she was smoking weed with her cousin, Jose Roybal, and a mutual friend.
They needed money, so they were gonna go hit the Ortiz's house. And I took them, I dropped them off, and I went back home.
She told me that she owned a gray 1997 Saturn car, two-door car, during the time of the homicide. So I immediately thought of Jesse's statement.
Cherie Ortiz's husband, Jesse Rios, had told police he saw a gray car driving slowly past their house late on the night of the murder. But it's what Ashley says next that grabs detectives' attention.
I got a call about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes later.
The call was from Jose's friend, and he needed a ride.
He got in my car, he had blood on his pants, he had a trash bag tied around his right foot. That's when he told me that he killed Stephen, Dixie, and Lloyd. He said he threw the pickaxe by the fence. He kept saying that he killed him, he messed up, he killed him.
Ashley told me that the single person that killed the Ortiz family was Nick Ortiz.
Ashley's revelation is explosive. This family took in Nick when he was having trouble at home.
He stayed there for upwards of a couple of months, in which he got very close with the family. He would eat there, he would get off the school bus there. It was basically his home, and they took him in.
But police need to be sure Ashley's telling the truth. After all, she has a rap sheet, and their suspect has an alibi.
The information that Ashley Roybal provided had to have come from somebody who was actually there during the incident.
Ashley explains another detail that puts her at the scene.
Do they wear gloves? Do they care about fingerprints, usually?
He had a sock on his hand.
He did have a sock on his hand?
Mm-hmm.
Police are hopeful they can find evidence in Ashley's car, but it's nowhere to be found.
It's 18 months later. She had said she had sold it to a tow company. The vehicle ultimately ended up at the shredder. Couldn't find it.
Investigators had to find another way to verify her story.
I received a lot of the phone logs, and that was my big piece of evidence at this point.
Cell phone records show the communication between Nicholas, Ashley, and her cousin Jose peaked around the time of the murders, so investigators immediately bring Nick back in to confront him with the evidence.
So I brought Nick in. He's in 100% denial of everything until I bring up the phone records.
I'm just gonna show you, dude. These are your texts between you and Jose. You're the orange and he's the white. That's how much you guys texted on Saturday night into Sunday morning. Is it surprising?
Well, with all due respect to you guys and all that, I'd really like to just stop talking and go home.
Okay.
I want another chance at another interview with him, so I didn't want to ruin it. So we ended the interview.
Investigators' next move is to haul in Jose for questioning. Since he's a minor, they get permission from his parents to speak to him.
He was 15 at the time. He drank a lot. He had problems at home. He didn't have a good reputation.
Police talk to Jose, and he opens up.
Ashley dropped me and Nick off so we could go rob the house. She left. Nick told me he would go in. He wanted me to go in with him to go kill. And I told him no. I didn't want to. I was scared. He started walking towards the house. When he started walking towards the house, I ran to the river. I got to my house. And then Ashley and Nick show up. Nick is white as a ghost. I knew he had did it. He told me he had did it. He told me he did it.
Jose's story matches Ashley's, and suddenly police have two witnesses against Nicholas.
On February 12th, 2015, I got the approval from the district attorney to get an arrest warrant for Nick Ortiz. District court judge signed it and said, go pick him up.
Just like before, Nicholas remains uncooperative.
So I brought him in a copy of the criminal complaint. There were 5 total charges on the criminal complaint that I gave him. He said, I don't agree with 2 of these charges on here. And there were only 2 charges that were different from murder. So it's an admission to me. I knew I had him at that point. It was him.
With Nicholas taken into custody, detectives finally have some news for the Ortiz family.
I absolutely was shocked when the police said he had done this. I didn't think I have ever known anybody in my life who could do something like that brutal. I've never met anybody that could hurt people so grossly. It didn't make sense because that was not at all his personality when he lived with us.
People were in disbelief. As a pastor, it was hard for me to even fathom the fact that a young man like this could do something so tragic, this gruesome.
On June 15th, 2015, Nicholas goes to trial for massacring the Ortiz family.
Nick was a minor at the time. Given the fact that this was a heinous triple homicide, the judge did agree with my office that Nicholas should be charged as an adult.
When the trial starts, the prosecution is confident of a conviction until an unexpected development jeopardizes the whole case.
So in the middle of trial, we received a big surprise in Jose changing his testimony completely.
Nicholas Ortiz alone stands accused of a savage triple murder. His 2 former friends are taking plea bargains to testify against him. But just as prosecutors think it's a cut-and-dry case, the unexpected happens.
So in the middle of trial, we received a big surprise in Jose changing his testimony completely, pointing at Ashley as the individual who instructed them to kill the family.
Originally, the plan was to rob the Ortiz family, but according to Jose, Ashley had something more sinister in mind.
Jose Roybal testified that Ashley said, "Why don't you just kill them?"
It's a stunning statement, which the defense denies.
The case agent said, "Well, she said she didn't say that." And then the lawyer said, "Yeah, but Jose Roybal says she did, so somebody must be lying." Jose testified that Ashley gave the two boys socks to cover up their hands and plastic bags with Kleenex in them to cover up their feet so that they wouldn't leave traces there. He also said that she is the one that handed Nick the weapon.
According to Jose, in the early hours of June 19th, 2011, Ashley tells Nicholas and Jose it's time to put her unthinkable plan into action.
Ashley takes Jose and Nick to the Ortiz house, drops them off.
Jose got scared. He left. He ran home. Nick went towards the house.
He knocks on the back door. Lloyd Ortiz gets up out of bed. When he opens it, he's attacked by Nicholas with the pickaxe.
He didn't stop there. He went into the house and struck Dixie twice in her temple on the right side of her head with the pickaxe.
Nicholas moved on to the kitchen looking for the money, but he found Stephen instead.
Recognizing who is in his house, Stephen puts up a fight.
Nick delivers 17 blows to his head and body and kills him.
After Nick killed the three Ortizes, he didn't take anything. He got scared, so he just left. He walked out the door and called Ashley.
The revelations come as a shock to the victim's family.
Every day that we were at that trial, it was devastating because we learned things. I learned things that I didn't know. And I wish I hadn't, because it still haunts me.
Nick doesn't say a thing during the entire trial. It's Jose's word against Ashley's. How would their competing testimonies affect the jury?
The case was based almost entirely on Ashley and Jose's testimony, and that was a point of contention amongst people up until the sentencing.
After 3.5 days, I remember the jury went into the courtroom, and the foreperson said, "We're just, no matter how much time you give us, we're just not going to come to a consensus." So the judge had no choice but to declare a mistrial.
It was horrible. It was devastating to me.
I felt like our hearts had been ripped out. We had all this hope.
Luckily, we have the opportunity to try him again, which we did.
17 months later, in December 2016, the case goes back to court.
Luckily, this time around, we proved to all 12 jurors that Nicholas Ortiz was the individual that killed those three people.
On October 28, 2019, Nicholas is sentenced to 25 years in prison. The victory rings hollow for the victim's loved ones.
What that felt like to me was each victim, my mom, my dad, and my brother, was only worth 8 years each. That's exactly what that is. It's a joke. That's not justice.
He's gonna do probably 12 to 15 years. No way. No way.
Ashley Roybal received a 20-year sentence. 6 years of that was suspended, so 14 years of incarceration.
Jose got full immunity for his testimony. He never got so much as probation.
Even though years have passed since the murders, their effects remain.
I would say I'm sorry to my parents and my brother. I'm sorry I wasn't there to help you. So I would say I love you and I miss you and I'm so sorry.
I want them to be remembered through their compassion, their love for children, their love for life, how they lived for us as their daughters, for my brother, and to remind us each day that that's how we should live.